number of years ago, when we were living in Chicago, Avi and I belonged to something called a CSA, a Community Supported Agriculture. It's an effort that's not particularly Jewish, although this CSA was coordinated through our synagogue. And it essentially is a way to connect consumers to the farmers who grow our food. It's a brilliant model because a farmer gets a community of people to pay money at the beginning of the season. So that gives the farmer some sense of security, regardless of what happens with the crops that year, in the midst of any uncertainties that may arise. And then the individuals receiving the food get whatever is fresh from the ground that week. We would get a weekly box of fruits and vegetables. And aside from being delicious and fresh, this process of belonging to the CSA really raised our awareness around what it meant to be a farmer. Because not only would we be receiving the box every week, but we would also get an update from the farmer. And she would tell us that soon the collard greens would be fresh, or she would tell us that the blueberry crop was a little bit smaller than usual this year. And we got to understand some of the challenges that farmers face. She would tell us about an infestation of an unexpected pest, or she would tell us whether there was enough rain or not enough rain for any particular crop that was expected. We would hear about if the weather got too hot suddenly and how that would affect whatever would be in our box that year. And I'd say that the word that comes to mind as I'm trying to describe what it felt like to be part of this process with the farmer is precarious. The farmer is in a very precarious position because as much as she planned and she knew exactly which crops she would be planting and harvesting, there are unknowns. There are forces beyond the farmer's control. And it's a precarious existence, sustaining oneself from the yield of the earth. And we get a taste of that in this week's parasha when the Torah describes the Shemitah. And of course, this means the 7th year of every 7-year cycle, we allow the land to lie fallow. But the Torah intuits that anxiety, that precariousness that a farmer will feel when trying to keep the laws of Shemitah, not to plant or harvest anything for the 7th year in the cycle. And the verse says, V'chi tomru, if you were to say, Ma nochal b'shana hashvi'it, what will we eat in that 7th year? How can it be? It's hard enough in a regular year, but in a 7th year when I'm not planting or harvesting anything, what will we eat? Hein lo nizra v'lo ne'esof et tvuotenu, for we are neither planting nor ingathering, harvesting our crops. And so God says, V'tziviti et birchati lachem, I will bring forth my blessing to you, bashana hashishit, in that 6th year, ve'asat et hativua lishlosh hashanim, and the crop in the 6th year will be enough for 3 years. Why 3 years? Well, it will be enough for year 6. It will have to be enough for year 7. But also, if we're not planting in year 7 and harvesting in year 7, we will have nothing to eat in year 8. And so that year 6 needs to be enough for year 6, 7, and 8. 8, of course, being really year 1 in the new cycle. And Rashi is describing the seasons that are passing, that it would have been in the month of Cheshvan, that's just after Rosh Hashanah, that they would have planted in year 7, and they would have harvested beginning in the month of Nisan. So that's the Omer that we're in the middle of counting these days. The Omer was the barley offering. The barley harvest came in Nisan, and you would have to then wait to plant in year 8 at Cheshvan in order to reap it in Nisan, and you wouldn't have any food basically till almost the end of the 8th year, or year 1 again. And so this precarious nature of a farmer's life was only multiplied at the prospect of keeping the Shemitah. And so keeping the Shemitah would have required an immense amount of dedication and of faith in God and a knowledge that everything would be okay despite one's own anxieties. Of course, the modern day Shemitah is kept in a variety of ways in the land of Israel today. But I think that this parasha holds some wisdom for us, because even if we're not connected directly to the land, even though we know regardless of the season we can show up at the local grocery and choose pretty much whatever produce we'd like off the shelves, we do sometimes experience moments of precariousness, whether we're concerned about what's in our bank accounts, or we're concerned about our health, or our children, or our grandchildren, or our other relatives and friends. Sometimes we feel that life is precarious, that things are not quite in our control. And the Torah is trying to encourage us to have faith, to say to ourselves, I don't really know what this is going to look like. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I know that I'm not alone. I know that I am the recipient of God's blessing, v'tziviti et birchati, that I maybe won't get exactly the blessing that I'm looking for at exactly the right time, but that if I wait patiently, if I put in all the effort that I can, if I look around a little bit more closely, I may find blessing. And whenever I do have that blessing, whenever I am fortunate in my life, when it feels like that year 6, the bumper crop, then put that in reserves for year 6, year 7, and year 8. Let that fuel us into the future, into whatever uncertainties may come our way. That God's blessing is something that we should embrace when we have it, and something that we should have faith is returning when we don't have it, when we are feeling precarious. So I wish you all a Shabbat in which we can see the blessings in our lives, in which we can open our eyes and receive everything that God has given us, all the good that is around us, and that we should have faith in challenging times that blessings are coming. Shabbat Shalom.